Let's talk about a pooch belly and how it's probably not what you think it is. In this video, we'll first talk about the mechanics that create a pooch belly, but then I'll also take you through a useful sequence of exercises that you can start working on that and actually start fixing it from the root cause. So a pooch belly is usually not a fat accumulation in the lower abdomen, but it's a pressure regulation problem between the thorax or our chest cavity and our abdominal cavity. So to illustrate that better, we're functioning just like a water balloon. We have our guts, we have our fluids, we have the air trapped inside of us, which we have to be able to pump up and down. So if we are a water balloon, and we have a really compressed chest, those are gonna be individuals with rounded shoulders and just compressed chest bone down. We are creating pressure at the top and pushing everything down into our pelvis to deal with. So all of this pressure and stuff pushing down into our pelvis, the pelvis will start changing shape to allow that. And all of the things explained before, those are gonna be happening at the same time as our center of gravity is shifting forward, and the pelvis will start changing shape towards this flowered out shape in order to make space for those guts and fluids. So now we have the pressure from the top, and we have this opened pelvis that is creating the space for these guts to fall into, which is also the level at which pooch belly appears. It's below the level of a belly button, and it's in that lower abdomen just protruding out because of that top-down push, as I mentioned. So we have more than one thing happening here. We have this pressure from the top pushing everything down, and this pressure from the top is created from overactive muscles like pecs, six-pack, abs, stuff like that, that it's compressing the top of our balloon system and pushing everything down. But what I'll focus on in this video is gonna be the pelvis shape that changes in order to create space for those fluids, the muscles that get affected, and how to start reversing that. A very often referred to muscle when it comes to pelvic floor and lower abdomen health is gonna be the transverse abdominis. Transverse abdominis goes from these two pointy bones at the front of our pelvis called ASISs, and it spans around the front of the pelvis right here. When this muscle contracts, it would usually bring these two bones closer together, which closes the front of this pelvis and creates a better pressure regulation so we can push this stuff back up. But if we have a constant top-down pressure into the pelvis, this thing has to open and it has to stay open in order for us to move around. So the first action that would make sense, it would be to release some of the muscle activity from the top so we can actually reduce the top-down pressure, and then we have to start working on this pelvis shape. So let's talk about this pelvis shape and this activation of the transverse abdominis so we can start pushing those things back up. Pelvis has two shapes. It has externally rotated shape, which is like a flowered pelvis like this, and it has an internally rotated shape. When it externally rotates, it's gonna close off the back of the pelvis and it's gonna open the front of the pelvis up just like that. This would bring these two bones away from each other, for which to happen, transverse abdominis has to let go or eccentrically orient, and now we just lost the pressure regulation at the front of the pelvis, and everything can tip over the front of our pelvises. So the opposite pelvis shape is gonna be this internally rotated shape, which brings these two pointy bones closer together at the front. It opens the back of the pelvis up, but most importantly, it brings the pelvic outlet in a better position for us to start pushing into the ground, but more importantly, to start pushing those fluids back up. So to start creating a better pelvis shape from this flowered up position more towards this internally rotated position, we'll have to work on some muscles. The gluteus medius being a biggest player here because it spans onto this bone and it can hold it flowered out like that. So once we'll have that released, we can start working on getting this bone to come closer together towards the midline of the pelvis so we can start creating this more internally rotated shape, which will help the transverse abdominis to activate because we are bringing 2 points of it closer together so it has a better leverage to do work. And a better leverage transverse abdominis creates a better pelvic shape, a better pelvic outlet position for us to start pushing up. So once we have the pelvis that can move from this position more towards this position which we want, we're gonna start using breathing exercises in inactive positions in order for us to hold that transverse abdominis activated and sync our pelvic outlet, our thoracic diaphragm, to push the volumes up and down and work together. For most of these activities, I will be using Levo belt, which is the only pelvic belt that brings the front of the pelvis together, and not only it creates a better pelvis shape, but it's also a great cue during these exercises. Check out the link in the description of the video if you want to learn more about Levo belt. Before we head to the gym and start showing exercises, it's important to note that a lot of these exercises will have the cue of expanding the back of your rib cage, because as we mentioned, we're getting pushed forward in space. Everything at the front is opening while everything at the back is closing off. So we have to reverse that. We have to close at the front and we have to be able to create space at the back, and that's why we cue those. And the cue I love using for that transverse abdominis to activate is actually putting the belt around the pelvis and then cueing to move away from the belt and make the belt too big as the clients are exhaling. And because the exhalation is correlated with the pelvic shape needed for that transverse abdominis to activate, this way we're making sure that transverse abdominis is working as we're breathing. So let's get into it. So the first thing we'll do, we'll have to work on that gluteus medius muscle. So you'll have to find your hip bone in the top of your pelvis. I like to use a slightly smaller diameter foam roller, which is this Black Roll Slim, so it fits inside this space between the hip bone and the pelvis. So we want to start with the foam roller directly on the hip bone, and we want to drop the foam roller just above that hip bone on the muscles. It's probably going to be pretty sore, and from here I'll just roll slowly from the hip bone up towards the pelvis. Let the foam roller dig into the tissues, return back towards the hip bone without any pressure on the foam roller. So I'm only rolling from the hip up towards the pelvis. I can also play with the angle a little bit to really get on that sore part. I'll do this 4 to 5 minutes each side. So now that we have released those muscles, we can start closing the front of the pelvis using this half roller, or you can also use a full roller. So I'm gonna start by putting the foam roller directly underneath my pelvis. I'm gonna bend my hips and knees so my heels are underneath my butt, and I'm gonna lay down onto my arm right here. From here, I'm gonna be taking a breath in as I'm lifting this leg up, opening the pelvis, rolling more to the back of my pelvis on this bottom side, but keeping this knee down on the ground. And as I exhale, I'm gonna be stepping over, landing this knee on the ground, turning towards the ground and feeling how my pelvis is closing on this bottom side. Inhaling up again, exhaling, stepping over, and as I get into this position, I wanna relax completely, melt into the roller so my pelvis can mobilize. Now that I mobilized my pelvis, I can put the belt on. So you should be putting the belt on just underneath those pointy bones. You don't want to put it down low at your hips, but you want to put it around your pelvis. You're going to put it on like that and tighten it where it's most comfortable and get into the hook lying position. So I'm going to start in this hook lying position with my feet hip width apart, hip knee foot in line, inner heels heavy and base of the big toe heavy, and I should be feeling the back of my pelvis heavy on the ground. I'm gonna press my heels into the ground just lightly so I can feel my hamstrings engage a little bit. Pelvis is still heavy on the ground. From here, I'm gonna get my hands onto my forehead, do the double visor like that, and just reach my elbows up towards the ceiling. From here, I want to take an inhale into the ground, so I want to feel my ribcage expand here into the ground as I'm taking an inhale. Feel the back of the ribcage up. Exhale. This is where my cue is going to come in. I want to exhale and I want to move away from this belt because I want these two bones coming closer together. You might feel some slight activation of these deep abdominals here, but the most important thing is you thinking about moving away from the belt and feeling less tension of the belt because you're making your pelvis smaller at the front. So hands here, reaching towards the ceiling, heels heavy, back of the pelvis heavy. inhaling in, feeling the back of my rib cage, exhaling, moving away from the belt. And now I feel that activation. I want to hold the activation upon next inhalation. Similar thing can also be done in quadruped position. So I'm just gonna feel my heels of the hands heavy and I'm gonna go into quadruped position, reach. I wanna get my tag of the shirt up towards the ceiling. I don't wanna round like that, but I just wanna keep long spine and reach through my arms into the ground. From here, I'm gonna be taking an inhale, feeling the front and back of my rib cage expand, and with exhalation, I'm gonna be feeling how my pelvis is moving away from the belt, making my pelvis smaller again and making the belt too big. Hold that upon inhalation, and I'll feel both the front and the back of my pelvis expand. And then as a progression from those two, I'm gonna be doing this wall squat very often. I'm keeping the belt on just to assist my pelvis into that position that I need to lift those guts up, but I'm gonna be doing this wall squat. I have a foam roller behind my pelvis and feet in front of me. Feet are hip width apart, hip knee foot in line, and from here, I'm just gonna lower myself down, feeling the inner heels heavy, letting the knee to translate slightly over, and again, I'm gonna be using the same double wiser here, reaching the elbows up and away, and here I'm gonna be taking my inhales, exhales, moving away from the belt again, expanding my rib cage as I'm holding on to the activation I achieved with the exhalation. So try these activities and progressions yourself or with your clients. And if you want to get more useful information like these exercise demos into your mailbox weekly, check out the link in the description and sign up to my emailing list.